Beginning on Dado podcast in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sorry, I had to play the whole thing. If you haven't heard, Friday, the world lost the great Kevin Conroy, the man who voiced the most iconic Batman of all time. And yeah, that kind of sucked a lot. Like, social media was just like, that's all. If you were even the most remotely minute Batman fan, your social media feed all day Friday was just tributes to Kevin Conroy. And yeah, I can't say I disagree. I can't even, like, normally I really, why people, like, a lot of people get really hung up on celebrity deaths. And I will admit that I've done episodes talking about it. And a lot of, especially 2016, man, so many celebrities died. It was like 1 year, there was like 60 some odd big name celebrities died in 1 year. It was stupid. I could be wrong about the year, but it was a stupid amount of celebrities in 1 year. And it was like every week, it was 3 or 4 more celebrities, big name celebrities were dying. So I can't say it, I don't talk about this stuff and I don't care. But it's also one of those things where you're like, really, is that big a deal? But when it comes to like nerd and comic book fandom, there is nobody that was ever held in a higher position than Kevin Conroy. Nobody has voiced a single character so iconically for such a long period of time. And it's kind of funny because at the same time as people look at Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, at this point is just as well known for being the voice and the voice, the most iconic voice of the Joker from Batman the Animated Series and a lot of the games. That was his Batman. Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy were the most iconic Batman and Joker ever. And that cartoon really showed the depth of character that you could have, and how to do a cartoon like Batman, who up to that point I didn't realize up to that point had never been done in an actual animation. It was a comic book and there were movies. That was it. And that show was very dark and very gritty and very serious. And it tackled serious issues, full steam ahead. And it made, kids were able to learn and confront serious topics watching Batman. And that is in great part to the work done by Kevin Conroy and his skill in portraying that character for what amounts to almost my entire life. You know, there's always the debate when it comes to what's your Batman, because there's been so many people that have played Batman over the years. You know, are you a Michael Keaton fan? Are you a Val Kilmer fan? Christian Bale, Ben Affleck. Nobody says George Clooney. And so, what's your Batman? What's your Joker? And for the longest time, you know, everybody thinks about the movie guys. You know, very few people even would consider Adam West in that. But he was Adam West, but it was always looking at Batman in the movies. What's your Batman? What's your favorite Batman from the movies? And everybody would argue over, oh, this is my favorite. This is my, oh no, this is like, Christian Bale was way better than Michael Keaton, blah, blah, blah. And everyone would argue over it. Fandoms, it's what they do. But the second Kevin Conroy's name comes into the conversation, everybody stops and everybody agrees. Oh, well, no, obviously he's the best. And it goes back to even something that Kevin Conroy said himself. And he's the only Batman who ever got to deliver the line. But it said in an interview, like, oh, Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, all these guys, they played Batman. I am Batman. And not a damn person would argue with him on that. And he's the only Batman who has the line, I am Batman. And he owned that. And I realize I've just spent the last 5 minutes gushing over a voice actor and Batman. But that cartoon existed at a very important time of my childhood. And it was something that was a constant. And it's one of those things that when you're a kid and you look back, like when you're an adult and you look back at those things from your childhood that really stick with you and that you really, like, you really feel. And you remember those shows and those things. This show really grabbed a lot of people. There are millions of people out there whose hearts broke on Friday because the Batman from their childhood is gone. And I know it sounds cheesy. And it is to a certain degree. But you know, it's one of those few things where I'm like, damn. A lot of celebrities, it's like, man, that sucks. Okay. But this is, you know, Batman is one of those characters that is so complex and there's so much about the character that exists in the world across his entire existence that for one person to have portrayed this character so iconically for such a large portion of the character's existence that the fandom and the world unanimously agrees that is the only real depiction of Batman. Every other version of Batman does not hold up to what he did. And the feeling and the familiarity of it. Adam West's Batman is Adam West's Batman, but Kevin Conroy's Batman is Batman. And there will not be any more of that. The next time you turn on an Arkham Asylum game, Batman's going to sound different. And that's going to feel wrong. It just is. And it's weird to think that it's probably going to affect a lot of people the next time they fire up the next Batman game. Or they may just turn on their old games or go onto YouTube and look up old episodes just to bring back those feelings they had from when they were kids. Speaking, because I'm going to try not to, I'm not crying, but it is something I was actually really sad about, because it was just somebody so iconic and so influential in my childhood. And incidentally, somebody else who was very influential in my childhood, more so influential on the development of my sense of humor as a child, also died on Friday. That's actually Gallagher. If you know anything, or if you've listened to me for any amount of time, you understand my very sarcastic, cynical, snarky sense of humor. And that is very much a product of the comedy that I watched as a kid. I grew up watching Richard Pryor and George... sorry. and George Carlin. And Bill Cosby and Sam Kinison and Gallagher. All these great, the stand-up philosophers. The guys that went out there on stage and you learned something watching them while they made you laugh. And they did silly things and they told jokes. But you also would learn something. And they very frequently would call out the stupidity that is human existence. And just the way we are as a species. And Gallagher was one of those. And he's the last of those, really. Off the top of my head, I don't think any of them are still alive. I think the last living stand-up philosopher wasn't even a stand-up. And it's Mel Brooks. In fact, that Mel Brooks is alive is a miracle. How the hell is Mel Brooks alive when everybody that he ever put in a movie is dead? Damn near. But yeah, Gallagher. And I had to explain when telling my wife Kevin Conroy died. He was Batman. Not he played Batman, he was Batman. And Gallagher died. She had no reference because she's not a big fan of stand-up comedy, especially stand-ups from the 80s and 90s. And so I played her Gallagher's bit on words and explaining how, B-O-M-B bomb. T-O-M-B Tom? No, tomb. Okay, T-O-M-B tomb. C-O-M-B coom? No, it's comb. Then this whole string of words. And how it just doesn't make sense. The English language doesn't make sense. The English language is 4 other languages and a trench coat. And when she saw that, she thought of... she immediately saw that influence on my sense of humor and my snark. But she also thought of Mitch Hedberg and Dimitri Martin. And you're like, yeah, very much so. Those guys wouldn't have had anything. They couldn't have existed without Gallagher. He was very much that early sort of intellectual type. Not so much intellectual, but it's hard to call a guy an intellectual who finishes his show by smashing watermelons with a mallet. If you didn't know who I was talking about up to now, that's that guy. We'd go through all these intellectual conversations and wordplay and all these sort of gags, and then bust out the giant hammer and smash some watermelons. And I honestly preferred the stand-up side of it. That's where I am. But yeah, the guy who is famous for smashing watermelons was also one of the great stand-up philosophers of my childhood who helped shape my sense of humor as it is today. Who I can still look back on and just relish in the lessons and the things that he said and his comedy to this day, I could watch a Gallagher show and laugh my head off. And I honestly thought he died a few years ago. No lie. I thought he had cancer and died years ago. But it appears that is what managed to take them both in the same day. And that sucks. Because, I mean, that's a big piece of my childhood lost. And, yeah, it was really kind of a bummer. Not actually shedding any tears for them. You know, I'm 38. This is, you know, things from my childhood. But it sucks. And it's, yeah, it sucks. And it's, you know, something, it's, again, very important in those formative years. And things I look back on fondly. And, yeah. It just sucks. It's a bummer. And, yeah. It's definitely going to be manipulating my YouTube algorithm for a few days. Watching old Gallagher clips and watching old episodes of Batman and showing that to my boys. I want my boys to see. It's just like making them watch old Sesame Street and watching old Disney cartoons and movies. I need to introduce my boys to Batman, to the real Batman. And when they're old enough, I will let them watch some of the stand-up comedy that made me the well-adjusted adult that I am today. But I think that is going to do it for me today. No big exit. I don't know how to exit from this. Sad show. Yeah. But it is what it is. You know, we move on. We remember those people that we've lost that made us who we are. This sounds really depressing. I'm sorry. All right, no more sadness. Tomorrow I will be back with, and this is going to sound like tomorrow, but I realize I'm a little behind schedule. I will have later today, if whenever time, you know, how podcasts work, I'm going to get caught up because I've been playing some new video games, or not actually new video games. I've been playing new to me video games that I've had and have never played. So I'm going to talk about video games. So that's coming up. Until next time, oddballs. Thank you and good night.